For a year, someone slipped anonymous notes under my door every Friday. I thought it was harmless. Until I learned who they were protecting me from. I am not sure if this is a love story, a warning, or something else entirely. I have never written anything this long here before, but for a year of my life something happened that I still think about every single Friday night. It started 2 years ago when I moved into a small apartment in an old brick building on the edge of the city. It was not terrible, with creaky wooden floors, a rattly elevator that sounded like it was on its last breath, and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. I had just gotten out of a long relationship, so I was focusing on work and settling into a strict routine: groceries on Thursday, laundry on Sunday, and takeout on Friday nights. The first note came on a Friday. It was a folded piece of paper, slipped under my door. Inside, written in neat cursive, were 5 words. And quote, "You looked sad this week," and quote. There was no name, no signature, no context. I laughed, figuring it was from a neighbor with too much time on their hands. Maybe the old lady from 3B who had once told me I did not smile enough in the hallway. I tossed it in the trash and forgot about it. The next Friday, another note. And quote, "You smiled on Wednesday. It suited you," and quote. That one made me pause. I actually had smiled on Wednesday when a co-worker brought in cupcakes, and for once I had a decent day. Whoever this was, they were paying attention. Over the next month, the notes kept coming. Always on Fridays, always. Slipped under my door at some point between when I got home from work and when I went to bed. Some were simple observations. And quote, "You wore blue today. It brings out your eyes." And quote, "You stayed up late last night. Couldn't sleep." And quote, "You looked tired this morning. Drink some tea." And quote. They were never inappropriate or threatening, just noticing me. And I started looking forward to them. Then the tone shifted. One Friday the note said, and quote, "You should not talk to the man in the lobby." And quote. Thing is, I had spoken to a man in the lobby that day. Tall, mid-40s. Wearing a suit, said he was visiting a friend on the 5th floor. He had been friendly enough, but something about him had felt wrong. When I asked a neighbor about him later, they said they had never seen him before. The next Friday, and quote, "Do not take the elevator tomorrow," and quote. I almost ignored it, but Saturday morning, the elevator was out of service. Apparently the cable had frayed badly, and maintenance said it could have been disastrous if anyone had been inside when it failed. That is when I started saving the notes. By month 3, I was actively trying to catch whoever was leaving them. I stayed home late on Fridays listening for footsteps outside my door. But nothing. Sometimes I would step into the hall for 30 seconds to grab a drink, and when I came back, a note would be there like they had been waiting. One night I finally wrote back, and quote, "Who are you?" and quote. I slipped it under my own door to the hallway side before bed. The next morning it was back inside. Same neat cursive, and quote. "Someone who wants you safe," and quote. The months rolled on. The notes never crossed a line, but they were always there, warning me about small things, commenting on moments I thought no one had noticed. And somewhere along the way I realized I had developed this quiet fondness for my anonymous watcher. Not the movie romance kind, just the feeling of being seen. Then, one cold February night, a note came taped to my door instead of slid under it, and quote, "Do not leave your apartment tonight," and quote. I was not planning to, since it was snowing heavily, but something about that note made me uneasy. Around midnight I heard shouting outside, then sirens. The next day, I found out there had been an armed robbery at the corner store I usually stopped at on Fridays. I should have felt grateful. Instead, I felt scared. Because if they knew that was going to happen, they were not just some random neighbor with good instincts. 2 weeks later, the final note arrived, and quote, I cannot watch you anymore. I am sorry, and quote. And that was it. No more notes after that. I asked around again. Nobody admitted to knowing anything, though one guy from 2F said, and quote, you should be glad they stopped. Sometimes people get too close. And quote, I moved on. Or tried. 2 months later, on a rainy Thursday, I was coming home late. The elevator was broken again, so I took the stairs. When I reached my floor, I saw someone walking away from my apartment, tall, hood up, moving quickly. In his hand was a small folded piece of paper. By the time I got to my door, the hallway was empty. And there it was, the first note in months. And quote, it is not safe here anymore. Please trust me. And quote. That is when I noticed my front door deadbolt was unlocked. I barely slept. The next day I decided I needed to see them. That Friday I sat in the dark by my door with my ear pressed to the wood phone, ready to record. Around 11:15 I heard soft footsteps, the faint scrape of paper on the floor. I yanked the door open. He froze. Younger than I expected, maybe late 20s. Dark hair, rain-soaked hoodie, eyes sharp and startled. And quote. You, and quote. I said. And quote. You were not supposed to see me, and quote, he replied quietly. I stepped into the hall, blocking his path. And quote. You have been watching me for a year. Who are you? And quote. His jaw tightened. And quote. Someone who owes you. Someone who is trying to make up for something. And quote. Before I could ask what that meant, he glanced over my shoulder and whispered, and quote. He is still in the building. And quote. My blood went cold. And quote. Who? And quote. And quote. I cannot explain here. And quote. He said, pulling his hood lower. And quote. Do not stay here tonight. Pack a bag. Go to a friend's, please. And quote. Something in his voice was raw and terrified. He shoved the folded note into my hand and ran down the stairs. I opened it. And quote. He has a key. And quote. I did not stay to think. I grabbed a backpack, shoved in essentials, and left. When I came back with a coworker the next day, nothing was disturbed except for one thing. The note I had left on my counter months earlier, the one that said, and quote, who are you? And quote, was gone. I moved out within the week. 3 months later, I was in the neighborhood for work and against my better judgment walked past the building. Daniel, that is what he told me his name was standing across the street, hood up, watching it. Over coffee, he told me everything. He used to live in my apartment 4C. Before me, his sister had lived there. One night she never came home. The police never found enough evidence, but Daniel was sure the man responsible was the landlord's brother, a man who lived illegally in the basement, slipping into apartments when tenants were out or asleep. The landlord never changed the locks. Daniel had been watching the place ever since, and when I moved in, he saw the same patterns: the basement light turning on at odd hours, shadows in the stairwell, tiny scratches around my door lock. The notes were his way of keeping me safe without alerting the landlord's brother that someone was onto him. I asked why he did not go to the police. He said he tried. No proof, no case. Before we parted, he slid one last folded note across the table. And quote, if you ever feel unsafe, call me. And quote, on the back was his number. 2 weeks later at 1:03 in the morning, I got a text. And quote, do not come near the old building. Basement lights are on. And quote, I never went back. Sometimes I wonder if Daniel is still there on Friday nights watching that basement window for the flicker of a light. And I wonder if the landlord's brother is still down there waiting. And sometimes when I am lying in bed, I think about how a stranger's love does not always look like flowers or dates. Sometimes it is a folded note under your door telling you to take the stairs instead of the elevator. And sometimes it is the only reason you are still alive to tell the story.